for many of my students, for so long, success has been measured by sort of conforming to whatever the external, whatever the expectation is. I guess one of the things I try to attempt in my class is to reignite the creative spark. I mean, I try to convince my students that being a successful attorney will require creativity, whether it's formulating some innovative argument or framing up the issues in front of a jury, or getting around some sort of complicated contractual deal. It's this imaginative, creative piece, I think, for many law students, gets tamped down along the way. And I'm not sure exactly why. I'm not sure if they sort of show up so oriented on getting a grade, getting the answer, and then moving on, and so it kind of becomes the creativity, the need to be creative lessens in some way, or if it's the dynamics of so many law school classrooms, where it's just, tell me the facts, tell me the law, and you sort of do the Socratic thing. I'm not sure why it is, but at least in my class, part of what I attempt, both in these student presentations and also in the final assignment, I try to reignite this notion of creativity as a really important skill. I mean, it's an important life skill for so many reasons, but it's an important law skill as well, I think, to be able to think creatively. So really, at the end of the day, what I want most for my students is for my students to connect with who they are, to work on what I call the awareness piece, this sort of sense of being personally in tune or in touch or aware of who they are and who they want to be. I mean, that to me is the most, it's a success when a student arrives at the end of my course a little more aware than they were when they came. So I think that to me is the most important. I think that, because I think the content, some of the content they'll retain, the majority of the content they won't retain. They'll have, when they face some sort of ethical conflict in their practice, they'll turn to their state's rules, or they'll turn to a mentor or the senior partner at the firm, or they will have resources to go to get refreshed on what the range of appropriate responses are. So the content piece, they can refresh themselves on that. But this deeper piece of connecting with who they are, connecting with the kind of professional they want to be remembered as. I mean, one of Larry Krieger's exercises I think a lot of us have borrowed is his eulogy exercise, where he has students, and I do this, I ask my students to imagine, again, creatively, what is it that you would like to hear said at your funeral? I mean, it's a somewhat morbid exercise, but it certainly is an attention getter. And what I do is I have my students do this early in the semester, and they can give them to me anonymously. I don't really care about who's saying what, but I want them all to go through the exercise of condensing into one paragraph the most important things they'd like to have said. I mean, this is what I think Larry doing this as well. And then I have all these paragraphs. I then take them, and on the last day do a PowerPoint presentation, a slideshow, where, again, anonymously, everyone's last words get flashed up on the screen as a way of demonstrating to the class that, look, those intrinsic things that are important to you aren't only important to you, they're important to all your peers as well. You may think that you're surrounded by a bunch of amoral um, gunners and folks who just want to get the high-paying jobs or the law review, good grades or whatever. But in fact, all of your colleagues want to have the same things said about them at their funerals. So there's this sort of I think recognition piece that in fact no, wanting to do the right thing. I'm not an outlier. In fact, wanting to be a good person, wanting to be well remembered, but those are priorities that are shared. So I think that's a helpful piece, because I think sometimes law students completely lose perspective and they forget that no, in fact, these are fairly widely held concerns and commitments. But the other thing it does is it reminds students at the end of the semester. So here we've been through this whole class of looking at concrete ethical issues and asking these deeper existential questions. But look, at the end of the day, when you showed up here in my class on day one, these were the things that you said were important to you. And so it gives me a chance to kind of frame the class. But again, it's back to this awareness piece. It's back to this deeper introspection piece. I don't think law students as a whole spend a lot of time going too deep beneath the surface. And so sort of going down beneath the surface that's a big part of what I think becoming a professional is. I think that's a big part, I think, of what any good ethics course would do. In my own life, the times when I have felt, whether personally or professionally, most dissatisfied have been those times when I have felt trapped, those times that I have felt like I didn't have much say in the matter. And so, again, I think it all ties back into helping my students, sort of reclaim their gut instinct, reclaim their intuition, because in the midst of a firm practice or an in-house counsel position or a government practice or whatever they're doing with their JD, inevitably, especially as new employees, young associates in particular, there will be a full range of issues they'll have very little control over, very little say-so over. And so for many of them, the only place that they will have much, I think, sense of control or sense of autonomy will be over sort of, well, am I advancing consistent with who I think I am, with who I want to be, with is this where I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Is this the kind of am I becoming the kind of person, the kind of lawyer that I will feel good about? One of the goals for my class, and I've written a little bit about this, is asking students to think not merely as a lawyer, but to think more broadly, more holistically as a professional. And what does that mean, certainly for you, but what would that mean more broadly for the profession if we were taking seriously this notion that, look, there's something about being a lawyer, there's something about being licensed, admitted into this organization that has an enormous amount of power, an enormous amount of influence and expertise and technical skill. What does it mean to be a member of an organization like that is purportedly self-regulating, and that has, I think, an enormous amount of responsibility? And so it's really sort of muddying up the waters. I think it's too easy to simply think like the lawyer and call it a day. And so I challenge my students to take the more narrow road, to take the road less traveled, to think, to sort of messy up what is otherwise can be a too tidy approach to sort of law, facts, zealous representation. As long as it's all within the four corners of the model rules, the law, okay, it's fine. And sort of stopping the analysis there. I think we can do better.